Hi, Shuntaro. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. So happy to be talking with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So where are
Thanks for having
you?
me. Right now
Yeah.
I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Whoa.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm here in Japan. And today I thought we would talk about, what you do and also about Baroque music because that's the kind of music I love listening to. I love playing, but I
Right.
never really had the chance to actually study the music itself, um, you know, properly. So I thought maybe you could tell me some tips and some characters of the music so that I get
Mm-hmm.
to know a little bit more about the music and
Mm-hmm.
I can properly play it. Of course,
Right.
myself as a classical saxophonist, I love Baroque music and I play Baroque music, but yeah, um, I want to hear like what's the real thing from you as a harpsichordist. I'm sorry, I was going
Right.
to have you talk about what you do, but you are a harpsichordist.
Right.
Anyway, so Shuntaro is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's a DMA candidate for harpsichord performance, correct?
Yes.
And he's working very hard on his degree right now, and playing various instrument as well. So, Shintaro, tell us about what do you do? What do you play?
Well, before we get into that, should we
Yeah,
talk about how we met? Because
that's
when we
true.
met,
Yeah,
I was just a piano player, right?
yeah, I think so.
I barely knew what the harpsichord was.
That's true.
I barely knew what early music was.
You are absolutely right. You
Right.
are a pianist. Yes.
Right. So I'm a pianist in training.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. And now I play the harpsichord and I play the forte piano and I do all these other things now. So, um, to, to a long story short, so I did 6 years of training at the University of Southern California as a pianist. Then I went to Germany for a couple of years. So when I first went to Germany, I was still playing the piano, but then one day I was like, I'm playing all these Rachmaninoff Scriabin pieces, and it just didn't really speak to me
Mm.
in a personal way.
Well,
And
they're beautiful music though.
it's great music. I love listening to Rachmaninoff's music and stuff, but for some reason when I was playing it, it didn't feel right to me.
Mm.
So so one day I just decided, hey, I'm not gonna play all this Russian, muscular music, and I'm gonna concentrate on what speaks to me,
Mm.
and that to me was German and French music,
Mm.
and then I, basically got into this, rabbit hole and just
What's so
kept.
distinct about German and French music, do you think, Shutaro?
I think it's the whole concept of rhetoric and affect and how it affects the mind and the heart. I mean, of course, Russian music, they do that too,
Mhm,
absolutely,
mhm, mhm,
but it hit me in a different degree.
mhm.
And so, and the French and the German tradition, it goes a long way, before the Baroque, and I really appreciated that. And I mean, first of all, this historical performance, compared to this modern piano world that a lot of people know, this historical performance is based on readings of historical text and historical information. For example, the treatises of CPE Bach and the violin school of of Leopold Mozart, and so we kind of get a glimpse of how people played, 300 years ago,
Right.
200 years ago, and that was super interesting to me. Because right now, in the piano world, and of course in the saxophone world too, there's a set standard that we kind of go upon, and but the history doesn't start 50 years ago. It started way before that.
That's true. Yeah, there's so many things before what it was written.
Yeah, right.
And that's not all about music, right? That has all to do with the life of the people, the art,
life of the people. Exactly.
What they do. It's
Right.
just the whole history, right?
Right. And that aspect of the historical informed practice was really interesting to me, and that got me into that rabbit hole, if you will.
Yeah, that's very cool. And to those of you who don't know what actually Baroque music is, which period is that? Can you explain a little bit about, can you explain what approximately around what time of the history?
It's approximately 1650 to 1750. That's around the time.
Yeah. Can you tell us what was going on in the world at the time?
Oh gosh, a lot.
Yeah, a lot was going on.
But the main thing was Louis XIV was ruling France, and he produced a lot of musicians and hired a lot of composers to make all this music.
And to stop you, sorry to stop you, but to think that music was not for everybody at that time, right?
It was a very majestic, not majestic, but like a very kingsley kind of thing.
It was a high art, and
it was a royal thing.
And the common people were not able to have access to those music.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in that way, so it, of course, the style of the music, because they're going to be for different occasions, right? Like dancing was not really for the common people. It was for the.
But the interesting thing is, all of this dancing stuff comes from the common people.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, but the kings and all these royal people, they use that, for their music.
That's interesting, because that's not something it's talked about. It just feels like, Quran is, I don't know, or, so many styles are written for that high, like you said, majestic music. But I had no idea that it was, for the common people. Now, how was that incorporated in inside that kind of estate or for royals? How were they? So it was used for it was already like dance, and it was in the style with the common people, but how were they starting to get incorporated within the royal people?
Well, the thing is, these kings, Louis XIV was a very good, instrumentalist, and he was a very good dancer. So he did all these things. So
he had the love for dancing, right?
For dancing and for all the arts, basically. And that really got everyone to produce all this music.
How interesting.
For the king.
Yeah. So that's the earlier part of the Baroque. And of course, Baroque period lasts for about 150, maybe not 200 years, right? Maybe approximately
200 years,
approximately 100 years or so.
Yeah, 150, I would say.
150, yeah. So during that time, of course, and there's an Italian Baroque composers, German Baroque, and they're in so many different locations. But it's so interesting how they're all sort of became to be known as the Baroque music because it's in that period.
Mhm.
But if you look at it in different parts of the world, like that, like French Baroque or German Baroque, it has a very stylistic and very distinctive style to each composer's. Can you tell us what are some of like the big differences, or do you see that kind of differences among the different countries, or?
Well,
What
it
do you
kind of
think?
all started in Italy.
Mm.
Then basically Louis the 14th was like, hey, their music is
In
super
France, right?
nice.
Yeah, in France.
So yeah, in France. So I want that music here too.
Mm.
And so this whole French Baroque stuff happened. Then people like Bach was like, oh, the French people are doing really great stuff, and the
Yeah.
Italian people are doing great stuff. I want
Yeah.
that too. And so it's all a culmination of,
So it was a trend. It was
Oh, yeah,
kind of like
for sure.
today's like getting something getting viral on
Right,
on
exactly.
Instagram or Twitter or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Italian composers like Vivaldi, he basically made it a trend to the whole Concerto Grosso style. That was a huge thing. So Concerto Grosso style is basically a conversation, a dialogue between soloist and orchestra, and that became a huge hit, if you will. Yeah.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big style. And also instrument, right?
What do you mean instrument?
Well, wasn't Baroque period when instrument was starting to get a bit more, how do you say? It was cultivated and
Oh, right. So it was around the Baroque period when stuff like the harpsichord was being developed, and the Baroque violin, and the oboe.
yeah.
So it was all coming together, and they were just
Right.
making music.
Yeah. So the instrument we see today in 21st century is relatively a modern style, right, of the instruments. They have been modified in so many different ways,
Right.
so that, for example, it'll play in pitch, or the mechanism is much easier.
Right.
It'll play louder, or it can play quieter, or so many different things. But what are some of the Baroque music? Like, so harpsichord is one of them, right? Like what else? So
Right.
Baroque violin. What are the differences between, for example, now and then? Like, for example, let's take harpsichord. Do you see
Well,
any?
one of the main differences is the difference in pitch. So right now, the universal standard is A is 440, give or take, 5 hertz.
Yeah.
But back then it was around 415. I mean, that depended on where you were. I mean, in some places A was 465, but because they didn't have internet back then, so they just kind of all did it by feel. And
they must have had really great ears.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I think a lot of it has to do with the organ, because these organ pipes were really expensive, and so if you make an organ pipe shorter, meaning less metal, that means the pitch gets higher. So that's why in some places in Germany, A was 465 rather than 415 or 450 or whatever.
Yeah.
So
So the pitches, right? What Shuntaro is talking about, like these 445 and things like that, is where you align which pitch should be like in the middle.
right.
for example, in certain orchestras, they tune the note. So, like an orchestra, so those of you who are wondering what this 400 things we're talking about is, that in orchestra, at the very beginning, when they play, the oboe player plays the pitch of A. And that pitch sometimes could be high and low. And that highness or the lowness, everybody has to adjust to that pitch. And that adjustment is, the measurement is the high would be 445. The modern orchestra in the United States is approximately 442.
Right. In Europe too, it's around 442, 443. Yeah, it's around there.
Yeah. That's interesting about the pitch. And that's why sometimes when I'm listening to sort of the replica of the original Baroque music, it sounds like almost a half note higher. Or is it lower?
High. Lower, you mean?
Lower, excuse me, half note lower. Yeah, almost like to my ear, it's like, oh, that's a C, but it sounds like a B.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah, because it's so So that's very cool. Yeah.
And a lot of it is, it's all made out of wood. So that difference of the quality of sound is different. If you compare a traverso flute with a modern flute, so
yeah. So in the saxophone world too, our music was not existing during the Baroque period. It didn't come into life until 1846. That's when it was patented. But since then, there has been, some great modification to the instrument, like the pitches. We're still, figuring out how to get the saxophone to play in pitch. So me as a classical saxophone player, and also jazz players too, if you really want to play it in pitch, there are some like other fingerings we use to tweak the notes, or use our embouchure to adjust the pitches. But instruments like harpsichord, once you hit the note, it plays it. So there's no adjustment that can be made. And since we're in the topic of adjustment of the pitches, you tune your instrument, right? Yourself.
I do. I do. Unfortunately, I don't have my tuning pin right now, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
But do you tune your instrument every day?
I try to.
Yeah.
It takes like half an hour out of your day, so it's like
it takes half an okay.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
And of course, in longer you don't tune, it takes longer for you to adjust the pitch. What do you think? Not really.
Well, that really depends on the day. I mean, with humidity and dryness, it goes back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you loosen the string? So let's talk about harpsichord a little bit. So what is harpsichord?
So here's a harpsichord right here, actually.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Is that,
I think go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
So the first harpsichord was built around the late 1400s, sorry. So 15th century. And basically it made a lot of, improvements, and it basically hit a high point, around the Baroque period. And so the main difference between a harpsichord and a piano is that a harpsichord plucks an instrument, plucks the keys, while the piano strikes the key.
Yeah.
So
strike the key or hit the strings, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let me just.
Thanks for showing us.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't plan on this actually.
No. This is very improvisatory, so I understand.
Yeah.
So, piano hits the key from the bottom like this.
Right.
Right. But
And
harpsichord, it plucks it from the top, right? Does
can you
it?
see this?
I think so.
So,
Whoa. Whoa,
so
whoa, whoa.
can you see this?
Yeah.
So this is what plucks the key. So this
Wow.
it's this little thing here. It's
That's
called a
so
plectra.
cool.
So this is called a jack. This whole thing, and this is a plectra. It's plastic. I mean,
Yeah.
back then it was bird quill,
Oh.
but because plastic, it lasts longer and things like that. It's cheaper. People use Delrin now.
It was
So this is
birds what?
bird quill.
Quill.
Yeah, like cement.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of poetic. Like.
Is it? Do you think so? Yeah. And so this is the Delrin, and this is the damper that damps the
that stops the note.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is that and I could show you the piano, which I have here.
Oh my gosh, you have a piano there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you're at the school.
I'm at the school, yes. Wait, sorry. So this is a forte piano.
Yeah.
So this is like the first incarnation of what we know as today, the piano. So can you see that it's hitting the note? Sorry.
Oh. Yeah.
So the hammer's hitting the note like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the harpsichord, that little piece of plastic is hitting or
Plucking
the
is that from the top
string.
or from the bottom?
What do you mean? It goes up.
Oh, it goes up. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah.
I see.
Now I can show you a little bit of. So this harpsichord has two sets of keys.
Oh my gosh.
And we call them manuals.
Yeah.
So this is the lower. We call them the lower 8 foot.
Mm.
That comes from the organ. It's an organ term basically. The 8 foot. That's the principal 8 foot. Hold on a second. ちょっと待ってね. All right, there we go. So here's the lower 8 foot, and here's the upper 8. Can you hear the difference?
A little bit.
Yeah. So basically, the difference is that it's hitting a different place on the string. So that's why it's making a different sound. So the lower 8 foot is hitting the string closer to the it's more inside the instrument, but the upper is hitting more closer to the edge of the string. So that's why it's making a more nasal sound.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit difficult to hear through the computer sound. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Well, that's very
this
cool.
Is
You can double your notes basically. You can.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
So if I do this, I couple it, which means when I play this note, it also simultaneously hits
the top as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I turn this on, can you hear this? it's playing
Oh,
the note one octave up.
octave upper. Yeah, higher.
Yeah.
Wow. So you can make it sound so colorful and so
Right.
different. It's almost like, I mean, piano or forte piano, for example, the keyboard instrument is already like an orchestra sometimes.
Right.
But
Mhm.
it seems like with that forte piano, by doing that switching, you can
Mhm.
even do more than
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, because
Cool.
the keys on the piano they're fixed, you know.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
but with the harpsichord, you could change manuals, and you could, you know,
Yeah,
do a lot of things. Which
very cool.
yeah,
Wow. Well, thank you for showing us.
of course.
Yeah. So, what are some of the important Baroque music that you want to talk about?
I mean, Baroque composers, you mean, or
Baroque composers. Do you want to get started on some of the topics we discussed about before about Baroque music? Like, what makes it so distinctive about Baroque music compared to like classical music or
right?
a modern music? What makes it Baroque music? Baroque music.
I think one of the main differences, or the first thing that one notices, is that the size of the ensemble is much smaller than
Oh,
the modern orchestra.
I see. So it's
And
perfect for this Corona time when
it
when
is,
yeah.
because it was really a chamber music.
Right.
It's right. It was in a room
Mhm.
and not in a concert hall where like thousands of people were listening. It was it was up to maybe 100 people.
Mm.
So the size is a big difference. But within that size, there's so much. Yeah. There was much more dialogue between the players, I feel.
I see.
And so what is distinctively Baroque? One of the main things is that especially in the classical period, when the sonata form basically took over the music world.
Mhm.
In the classical sonata, there's the first theme, but there's also a secondary theme.
Mhm.
So and these themes usually they differed from each other. I mean, they were related, but they were
Mm.
different.
Mm.
But with the Baroque pieces, there's one theme, and they go on with that. So I mean, there are episodes, which is like a little, how should I say this? So crap. So these episodes are basically なんて言うんだ、寄り道。
Sidetracks?
yeah, sidetracks, sidetracks through different keys.
Yeah,
And yeah.
that's very well said. Yeah. Yeah. So, you're walking the walk, you're taking a walk and then you see like, oh, that's a beautiful flower. Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's yeah, you get to enjoy the scenery.
The scenery more.
The scenery of different musical keys as the music.
Right.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's where the circle of fifths was very useful, because it just did it really automatically. Yeah.
And mathematically and musically and mathematically it made sense.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, circle of fifth is a musical term that it's very difficult to explain exactly what it is in just like through our just conversation right now. But it's basically it's a circle of notes that goes up in fourths or fifths. That
It's basically this.
Yeah.
You're going down the scale or up the scale, you know.
Right. And that the idea of those sets of notes in the circle determines the key of the music and determines like which key can go to another key. Correct?
Right.
Did I say that well enough?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. And I think for Baroque music, it has a very kind of not boxy, but has a certain rule of it doesn't all of a sudden go to like a key that's like really far away, don't you think?
Right.
Or does it?
That's where we get into J.S. Bach.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, right. That's true. It's a bit predictable, especially in the earlier Baroque period. You kind of, if you get used to the Baroque music and you're listening to it, you're playing it, you're like, oh, this feeling is probably tending towards a certain key.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a certain formula.
Yeah, it's like a person walking, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm starting to feel hungry. Oh, I'm starting to smell this really, I don't know, ramen.
Exactly.
I want to go to the ramen store. Okay, I'm gonna go to the ramen store. You know, it's like a really predictable storyline like that. But like you said, with the J.S. Bach, who he is known as the master of.
Well, people don't know him as the father of music, right?
That's true.
So
father of music, even though there was so many composers prior to his time, he's been considered to be the father of music because he really established the system.
The system. You know, he just basically put Western classical music on a different level.
Yeah. And one of the things we just mentioned was all up until him, music was sort of predictable in certain ways. It
was very formulated.
Thank you. Yeah. But when we got to J.S. Bach, oh my gosh, she can just like put a chord and go to like somewhere totally unpredictable.
Exactly.
And that made a huge shift in music, I feel.
Right.
Yeah.
But interesting thing is like he wasn't so popular when he was alive, you know.
Oh, how interesting.
No, when he was applying for the position in Leipzig, he was actually the third candidate. First it was Telemann, then second was this guy named Graupner, then it was Bach. And so basically Telemann and Graupner, they couldn't take the position, so that's why that position went to
They
Bach.
were too busy, maybe.
Yeah,
they were too popular.
Yeah, basically.
How interesting. So, and don't you think people who are like in the vogue at that moment, they're popular, and that's what is being required, and to kind of go to the next level, you kind of have to be a little bit of a sort of an odd one, right? That people may not certainly accept right away. So maybe that was the thing with Bach. I mean, the fact that he was already at the top 3, that's already saying
pretty
something.
good, right?
Yeah, that's saying something already. But the fact that from our senses right now for not having Bach at the very top is very sort of like questionable, right? But maybe at that time,
we probably could say this because we're 300 years after him, and we're looking everything like it is, with hindsight. So it's because because basically what we're doing now, like for example, you know, being a YouTuber now, that's like a normal thing, right? But doing something like that's super crazy, that takes guts,
Sure.
and people might not accept it, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
because it's something so bizarre and so you know.
I mean,
outlandish.
take Steve Jobs, for example. You
Right,
know, for him to be doing what he was doing at that time
right,
was very ahead of his time, and yeah, there were certain difficulties he's faced.
exactly.
So, like
Yeah.
I said, I mean, to be in the top 3 is already good enough.
It's good enough.
But yeah,
Let's get that one up, you know.
Mhm. But
It's doing these crazy things.
yeah, but from there, he really became the person. He was very persistent with his music and very sort of, um,
Well, right.
well, charismatic.
Well, he was forgotten actually after his
Mm.
death. You know,
Mhm.
and it was basically with Mendelssohn that you know the Bach revival happened, and that's why we know Bach as we know him today.
Thanks to Mendelssohn, huh?
So thanks to Mendelssohn, yeah.
How
No,
about with
he did a lot of great things actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the composer that may. I mean, Mendelssohn is already Felix Mendelssohn is a brilliant composer, and he's well known, but he is not much known. Like, right? I mean,
As
he
composer, you
is
mean?
yeah, as a composer. I mean, he is
Yeah.
he's there, but and
Right. But I think he was more important as an educator and a conductor. So
maybe that's why
right.
he's written like children's music, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I see he was more of a pedagogue than
Right.
yeah.
And he was the one that because he was the director of the Gewandhaus Orchestra in Leipzig, and he also you know built the um the conservatory in Leipzig.
I
So
see.
he did all that, and
Mm,
so he was a very progressive, but also a very active figure
huh.
in Germany.
In Germany, I see.
Yeah,
Now,
and
Mendelssohn is
mhm,
he's a classical composer, much later than Baroque, not
right.
much later than Bach's time.
Hmm.
Maybe getting into the romantics.
Yes, he's a romantic composer.
Romantic composer, that's right. He's a
Yeah,
romantic composer. So, it's been probably 150 to 200, 150, maybe 100 years later than Bach.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was basically his performance of the Saint Matthew Passion that basically you know let the whole world know, hey, this is
Mhm.
Bach's music.
Wow.
Don't forget this guy here, you know,
Wow.
because basically, I mean, Bach was known within the music circle, but basically no one, you know, outside of music knew who J.S. Bach was.
Huh.
So
Wow, that's
yeah,
surprising, right?
yeah.
To
Thank you,
think.
Mendelssohn.
Yeah. I see. And is that how his Bach's sons, like CPE Bach, is that
Mhm.
how they got they got spotlighted as well, you think? Through
Prob-
Mendelssohn? What? Yeah.
w- Not through Mendelssohn, but C.P. Bach. You know, he was also you know active. You know, in the court. You know, he
Mhm.
was. I think from the early 20s, he got this position in Prussia. So he was the court musician to the King Frederick, and so he was making a lot of music, and he also wrote this this essay on this treatise,
Mm, mm,
the essay on the true art of playing the piano,
mm,
or something along those
mm,
lines. And so he was a major figure in the classical, music circle. And W.F. Bach, Wilhelm Friedemann Bach, was also active.
He had
And
so many sons.
Right. He had 20, but only a couple of them survived. So
that's true.
And J.C. Bach was active in London. So,
Yeah. So they were out there.
Lineage. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they were out there, and impressive musical family. I mean, it's not easy to have such a big father figure,
Right.
even though he was not as famous as we know him today. But
well, the thing is, it was important people back then to focus on contemporary music. So it was not, the thing to do to play Baroque music during the time. So they were constantly, making new
of
works.
course, yeah. Well, I mean, people of that time didn't know that their music was going to be called Baroque music, right?
Probably not. Right.
Yeah. And we don't know what people will say about our music today. I mean, we're still sort of in this modern music, right? Or 21st century music. That's how we refer it in music history or music appreciation class. But who knows? Like 100 years later, 200 years later, they might name this music what we have something else.
Music X. Right.
Yeah. So, Baroque music is so deep. And in order for us to understand the music of today, I think it's extremely crucial for us to know the music of the Baroque and possibly even music before that. And and I'm hoping that you can sort of spotlight some of those important factors of Baroque music through our conversation that we're going to be doing some series. Now, we have about maybe 5 to 10 minutes we can talk about, but what are some of the things Baroque music distinct character in Baroque music you would like to talk about?
Well, why I decided to get into this whole historically informed practice was because I felt there was a limit in when I was playing piano. When I was just playing piano, there was this gold standard. Hey, you have to sound like Marie Pariah or something, and that was very limiting to me,
and because everybody's playing it. There's so many piano repertoires out there,
right?
And what's called quote unquote standard. I mean, the standard is a saxophone numbers. Of course, there's so many music now, but compared to piano, we don't have a whole lot. But as a pianist, you have a whole lot of repertoire and everybody's playing it,
right?
So.
And I mean, I'm not trying to blame it, but it's partly due to the whole CD, recording industry. They basically standardize, hey, this is how it should go, and it's how it is. And so that's basically post World War II. But if you actually listen to pre World War II recordings, so I'm talking like 1905 to like 1930, around there. The playing is so different.
True.
Yeah, and it was really striking because it was. I mean, they were still playing the notes. I mean, maybe they weren't, as fast as we play them today or whatever, but
the recording technique was not as great as today.
Not as great as today, but the performance was so free, and it wasn't like boxed in to some thing, and I really appreciated that. And I mean, that's kind of why I felt like, hey, maybe I could do something with that and not be another Murray Pariah or another Christian Zimmerman or whatever, who can play all this, big repertoire.
Yeah.
So this freedom in expression and the way people took time really spoke to me. And with this historically informed practice, I mean, early musicians, they tend to get the nerdy tag. So I mean, it's certainly very nerdy because we're basically looking at stuff from 200 years ago, 300 years ago, and trying to enact that. But within that, if you take the nerdy part away, there's something really beautiful about pursuing that that freedom and this breadth of expression. So
I think you spoke that very well. And yeah, with our recording technology, you can cut certain things and you can edit things, but the recordings before was not able to. So you have to, you have one shot to do that recording, and that was it, right? So to have that sort of mental focus and without any kind of distraction was, I think that's something we're missing right now, because we have so much information around us, and we have access to them as well. And we have, that can sort of be overwhelming.
It really is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to have access to a lot of music is great, wonderful. But as a performer, sometimes that could be a bit too much. And you actually want to pursue your sound, your tone, your, the freedom, like you said. But I say it to my students all the time as well, because once I give them the piece to play, they will right away go to their streaming or to CD. They're not listening to CDs anymore. Like I used to listen to Spotify, Apple Music, or maybe even go to YouTube to listen to music. It's wonderful. They have access to this music, but it really plants them certain ways of playing by listening to others.
Now, because all these recordings are readily available now, it's so easy to get a preconceived notion of the music.
Yeah.
And people 100 years ago, they didn't have that.
Exactly.
So they were just playing.
And we're going to be talking, when we get into sheet music, we'll talk about it. But there's so many hidden things in Baroque music. There's so many things that is not being written in the music, and you have to be so creative and. Of course, having the knowledge of that style, but you have to be creative with your, what you do within that two notes you have. And if you listen to so many recordings already, you already have these ideas that's planted onto you. So, more and more, I feel like, you have to come up with your own and without any kind of ideas. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Do you don't right away go to recording? You think? What do you think? For ideas, right? For some certain things, certain aspects.
For an initial idea, maybe, yeah. If I'm crunched for time, maybe, probably. Yeah, just to get a very quick idea of like what to do. Yeah. But those days, 100 years ago, they didn't have that. So they just played what they knew, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if you listen closely, it's never on time. So today, if you don't play on time, you're like, oh, in a competition, you're out, basically, right?
Yeah.
But back then, that was the norm. That's how people, made music.
Yeah. And it was a conversation between the musicians. It was, So I really like the fact that you are exploring that part of music, because that's and talking about it too, because I don't think that's the part of music people are not talking about these days. And I hear from my students how, like, look at this, this person is playing so fast or playing so high or playing, in such a technical way, and it's great, but like, sometimes it's like, is that really, it gives you that instant stimulus, but is that really a music that
And another thing that I'm still working on it, but over the last couple of years, I've been really trying to delve on is that studying early music and studying all these works makes me really aware of harmony and how harmony worked with the melody, and so it was like learning a new language. So and not to say that when I was just playing the piano, I wasn't, I was taking all these theory classes, but it didn't really it made academic sense. Like I got it, but like I wasn't able to, put it into practice. So, but now, I'm at the stage where I'm like, oh, so this is how it works. This is how harmony and that's how they're integrated, and that's how we perceive, what's being, brought to us. And so this whole concept of language was really important. It was like learning grammar in a way, like so the notes on the page are like words, but it's the grammar that it glues the words together, and it makes it makes the words into sentences and paragraphs and whatever. And that's how I feel like studying early music is doing for me. It's really gluing my understanding of music, and it's making me more appreciative of what's happening, really.
Very good. And I'm super excited that you will be giving some of those ideas from the music, early music in the music we'll be talking about. And as a saxophonist, like I told earlier, I think a lot of us play, all the music, but especially those earlier music, the Baroque music, or even music before that, sort of imitating. Like imitation. I mean, I do a lot of imitation. I do a lot of transcriptions of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, and I imitate the original instrument, because those are the sources, But I really feel that playing on the saxophone sort of gives a different kind of color to the music. And if I could possibly learn a little bit more about the early music that you are knowledgeable in, maybe I will have a better understanding of the music, and that's what I'm
I
hoping
hope
that
so.
I can get from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in our talks, hoping that we can pick up some of the music from the early music and Baroque music. It might be Bach, it might be Telemann. We don't know quite yet, but
Mhm.
you can possibly talk about certain characters of Baroque music
Right.
that I will have a better understanding, and hopefully maybe I can talk about that in the saxophone world, in the wind and instrument world, possibly about especially to the saxophone world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
And
so.
I think it'll give a different. You'll get a different picture, a different angle.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah,
And
so
looking forward to the results.
yeah, and I'm very thankful that you're on here. Your Saturday evening and my Sunday morning.
Right.
Yeah, so wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much, Shuntaro. I can't wait to be talking with you more about music with you. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you hopefully in a week.
Great.
Okay, all right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.